Welcome to the MSL Lead Chronicles. It's a podcast on a mission in medical affairs and leadership. I'm Mary Morton, and along with my buddy, Chad Fellers, we're going to have casual talk about important topics and challenges in leadership. So whether you want to elevate or further develop as a leader, or your ambition is to transition to a leadership role, you've tuned into the right podcast, and we are so glad you're here. Stay tuned.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of MSL Lead Chronicles, a medical affairs podcast where leaders develop leaders. I am one of your co-hosts, Chad Fellers, alongside the lovely Mary Morton. And Mary, we've talked about a lot of pitfalls of how industry currently measures the value of MSL, what happens when metrics are used as the way to evaluate performance versus being a tool to help evaluate. And we've had so much good feedback from our listeners. I really think, as great as these conversations have been, I would wager that our discussion today is going to be the most impactful to date. So, we talk about how we're going to bring value to the thought leaders that we serve. So I thought, Mary, I should try to take this to another level. And I think that I threw this idea out and you were on board with it. We wanted to get feedback directly from a thought leader. So really excited about the guests that we're going to have that we had a chance to connect with, and we're going to share today.
Yeah, I'm with Chad. I mean, who are we going to ask how good a job your MSLs are doing than the person you're supposed to be in part serving? So yes, so Chad has lined us up a great guest today. Dr. Patrick Wynn. He's a thought leader in many therapeutic areas: allergy, asthma, immunology, endocrinology, pain and headache. And Chad worked with him for years when Chad was an MSL. And now Dr. Wynn has really expanded his reach. And this conversation is going to be amazing. I think you guys are going to really, really like it. He's partnered with industry as a speaker. He's served on ad boards, and he's an active clinical researcher.
Yeah, and Mary and audience, if these are enough, what really impresses me the most about Dr. Wynn is his business acumen. If you could describe him, he would have a mantra, if you will, of find a need, fill a need. He is very entrepreneurial mindset, creative, and not willing to just settle for things. He is all in. He goes all in on an idea and lets to see how it plays out. So I think he's going to bring a lot of things to the table today when we talk about everything from the value of medical affairs, how it fits in the context of really the business aspect of pharmaceutical industry, how to make lasting relationships, et cetera. So we've said all that. We've set up this great intro, but let me first introduce you to the man himself, Dr. Wynn. Dr. Wynn, thank you so much for joining us today.
So I live in St. Louis, Missouri. Most of my medical practices are over in Illinois. So the greater St. Louis area encompasses both the Missouri side and the Illinois side. And one of the most rapid growing areas of the metro St. Louis area is actually east in Illinois. So you can either move 45 minutes west, 20 or 30 minutes east. And that's kind of, I saw the opportunity for about 500,000 people, probably more than that now. And there's this river that runs straight through the city that basically is a force field. And so the one allergist that was over there, I guess there were two allergists over there, but one of them in the area I was interested in looking at had moved away to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and it was just an empty void. And so I said, you know what, I didn't see myself surviving in academia, although I thought of myself as an educator. I just saw people way smarter than me not make it, or at least having a very hard time writing grants and getting funding. And so I thought, you know what, I've always had this entrepreneurial spirit. I've never taken a single business class in my life. And yet I just had this desire and drive to start creating. And I think that stems from the fact that I may have just been a musician had I not gone into medicine, right? So being a creative is really what's led my path, and I'm continually looking for new things to learn. I mean, I've expanded so far away from medicine now. We just raised money for a space fund, and we're doing personal investing in different
You're
countries.
like a one man Shark Tank.
Yeah, I think much smaller scale. Obviously, a much smaller scale, but I think that's a good description. Though I look for things that are interesting. I if I don't know anything about it, like I got into cannabis early in Missouri. It was illegal, and then it became a medical possibility. And I got a group of investors together, and we wrote, and we got 11 out of 11 licenses, and just getting that off the ground from applying and having the oversight and we got 3 grow, 2 processing, and 5 retail locations. I had no knowledge of that industry. I knew, the medical side. I knew, local, regional, and federal oversight because I have a clinical research center. So I felt pretty comfortable understanding that would be something that would be pretty stringent. And they wanted a medical person on the team for the applications, and I had friends in the St. Louis area, so we just used our regional power to put together an investment team, and we did it. And as soon as we did it, I kind of lost interest. It was the part of attaining that,
Is the
and
chase.
it's the chase and learning something new. And as soon as I realized that we'd done what we set out to do, that's the 0 to 1 portion. I lose interest in ramping it up and seeing how that goes. So. Um, but that's gone in so many different directions in my life. Just now that I think about this, I'm doing music that way, and gosh, so many interesting ventures that I found, just being an inquisitive person and being as authentic and as transparent as I can be, because I think that's the way you lure like-minded people together to do things in life. Is to and for me, life is about creating meaningful life moments. However you can do that, creating, like, if you can create a new song, you can create a new business, or you can create meaningful life moments among people. That's what life is really about for me. So um, I think that I strive every single day to continue that mission of just trying to take advantage of every single second that I have on the planet, and to try to leave it in a better state than it was before. And like Chad and I have known each other forever, and we worked with him when he was at Teva, and I think it's that general just thirst for knowledge and understanding, and creating those meaningful life moments that led us to continue our relationship enough to even meet today. And you just never know. If you leave yourself open, you find all sorts of new people and different people than you would have ever imagined finding yourself around. And every single one of those is a potential channel, or a potential future endeavor that you find some way to go down some path, even if it's just learning. It's not business, or it's just purely creativity for creative purposes, as I continue to work towards getting more towards the creative side in music, which was my original passion in life. So yeah, I don't know. I think if you're just generally have a thirst for knowledge, and you're curious and you're open and you're transparent, I think that's really 90% of what life's about. So
We like to start with the key takeaways as part of it. The hottest topic is, how do you provide value as you reflect back to all the ones that you've engaged? And doesn't mean that not all of them bring value, but what separates good from great? And then, like, where can we take things? Where do you see thinking creatively that we could help support in maybe some kind of new way?
I do think of all these are just relationships. They're all relationships, and the ability to establish a relationship with the people you interact with is absolutely the most important thing, because there has to be a level of trust. The ability to communicate new information is so important. But we get bombarded with people all the time, right? And we meet all sorts of people, and some people just, they don't have it. I don't know if you can teach it. I think you have to look for people that are capable of communicating, and you get personally invested. Like, you learn something. The people that I can remember that have had meaningful relationships with me in industry from an MSL perspective, they've been people that can connect on a personal level. They tell me some type of a story about their life that I can hold on to. And every time I see them, it's not only what's the newest data, what's in the pipeline. We can talk data quickly, but it's about developing a relationship where there's trust and the ability to communicate that data in a way that I believe is earnest and transparent. And the more I know about mechanism of action or new clinical data, the more likely I am to be comfortable to prescribe the medication. In the end, the goal is to get medications to patients to make them feel better. So anything that you can do to find people that have the ability to be relatable, that have a story to tell, that can tell a story, that can be engaging, that having the ability to communicate in a way that is not only straightforward but personalized, and that they remember you. I think it's, just it takes time and energy. And how do you assess that? Gosh, especially when you don't have sales to look at. I think that's obviously a challenging thing to do. But I think if you can get engagement, if you can assess that they're actually meeting with providers, if you can get them to take conference calls, if you can get them to attend the booths at the conferences, or you invite them to an ad board and they're going to interact, or if they'll take a clinical trial, like myself, if we have a clinical research center, if you're getting that type of interaction where you're engaging, then your MSL is doing a great job. So I think if you can assess that they're seeing people regularly, that they're having meaningful interactions, that they have return follow up, I think those are the best way to really assess their success and their position.
How I try to explain it to, like, even from an email, like, you're going to outreach to a provider. I tell one of my MSLs, I mean, you always begin with a with them. What would compel Dr. Wynn to be able to open up an email when he's getting 200 emails a day? He may be the focus of our business, but the reality is we are not the focus of his business. So, I mean, there has to be a reason that's compelling to him, worth his time, et cetera, to be able to do that. So how can you do that, communicate that? And oftentimes we get one shot. So I love the idea. And I think that this is where the disconnect is many times within those scientists that come into the MSL or the field medical role, is they think the only value that they can bring or want is just data. I think I love hearing this from one of the top thought leaders, that this is the first and foremost thing. So when I hear about the two major things that you said, personal connection and telling a story, and then being able to communicate things in an authentic way, those are the key components to really establishing a foundation for a future relationship, and not just someone that can regurgitate a PI. So thanks so much for sharing that. That's really helpful.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get buy-in from other scientists if you can just say, "Oh, we've all." A lot of us have done the clinical trials. A lot of us know the PIs in and out. We really are looking for a long-term relationship. So when questions or queries or concerns come up, we have a source that's trusted, and you have to have that personal connection. You have to, like, I think of like one of my most meaningful MSL relationships. Like, I know he's an umpire. He umpires, and so every time we meet, we talk about our families. We talk about that fact, and then of course it always goes down to that. But when you have that personal connection, that makes them stand out. It just automatically solidifies that relationship in a way that you can get people that are super smart and they can go get data and they get information. But if you don't connect with them, you're not going to have that meaningful back and forth that you do if you have a personal connection with them. So I think that having a smart person there is important, but gosh, if they can't communicate, you just keep looking. I'd much rather have someone that can be taught to look up answers and someone that can communicate than some brain who's got, a pharmacy degree or a PhD or an MD that's like, an automaton. I don't want that in my life. And it's like, there's so many other people. I can go to a computer and Google if I want that stuff. This is really about trust and a long-term relationship, and if they can't be that engaging, then you're not going to get the participation, like I said, in the at the clinical research level or things like you want to have people that are like, man, I just thought of you because of this and your interest in this, and I saw this is coming down the pipeline. And if you have that connection, it's gonna reap so many rewards from a business perspective.
I love it. I love it. Mary has been sitting quiet. I'm going to give her a chance to ask maybe a couple of questions to you, or at least one. Mary, this is the quietest I've ever had you
I knew
be.
you were
You're not
about
even
to
on
say
mute,
that.
so this is awesome.
It's like, I can't believe she's been sitting there and hasn't said a word. Well, so I'm the less articulate of our power duo here. So one of the questions I kind of had was, when you have had a visit from an MSL, sometimes they leave and I'm sure you go, that was mind blowing. That was so worth my time. And then other times you're like, I wish I could get that 30 minutes back. That was such a waste of time. I mean, I think that's kind of where the delineation comes in on whether or not an MSL is truly bringing value to you. I mean, we want them to bring value to you in an earnest way, like you said, but sometimes So we've been talking about metrics for the past couple of weeks, and there are some organizations that are holding their MSLs to almost like sales-ish kind of metrics. Like you gotta get this many interactions in a certain period of time, and so they're rushing to check their boxes. And you guys don't want to be a box to be checked, right?
I
I
mean,
mean, have you ever
that's one
felt
aspect
that
where
way?
you're talking about quantitative assessment, right? Essentially,
Correct.
and I'd be much more interested in the qualitative side, which is very touchy feely and very hard to assess. But I think those ways that you get the engagement, they are uh, the fact that you get buy-in from the providers. The way you can assess whether or not these are meaningful interactions is you'll have physicians who become much more interactive and much more communicative. The ones that I have that come into my office and they spout off things and they're like, "Hey, I'm your MSL. I'm here if you need me." You never make a connection with you. There has to be something more. There has to be that personal, that personal assess. Long. There has to be something more there than, and I described it as an automaton, and that was pretty cold. But like, something more than just someone spouting out information at you. It's just it doesn't tell us. I don't know. You only get so many moments in your life, right? And my goal is to have as many meaningful life moments as possible. And if you're going to surround yourself with people that wash out in the noise, the quantity, the number of interactions is not going to be very helpful, in my opinion. So finding a way to meaningfully assess the quality of those interactions by getting physician buy-in and feedback, and maybe you need to be assessing the physicians and say, do you even know who this person is? What type of interactions have you had? Those are the things that I think that may be useful, and I think there's no doubt that in the end these are for-profit companies that want to sell medications, and you have to get the scientific message out there and pipeline information and updates to the prescribing information, but it's all the other dark matter that exists that you can't really put your finger on that makes that all that stuff stick, because otherwise it's just noise. It's in one ear, not the other, from my perspective. So
And so I have a point and a question for you then. A point. So what I'm hearing is you can spot those box checkers a mile away. And so my question then after that is, you were saying, the companies can very easily find out if the value is being brought by, I guess, getting that feedback from you guys. So what do you think is the best way for leadership to do that from your perspective?
yeah, I mean, I think there has to be a relationship there too, right? Because we get so many questionnaires and surveys and things like that in the mail. So there needs to be some type of way to be engaging about this and say, listen, I mean, I get these ads on Google or, YouTube and things like that all the time. They're asking me a survey. Do you remember seeing this ad, or remember seeing this or that? And 90% of the time I don't, because they didn't do an effective job of advertising. So it's a great question. I'm not sure I have a great answer for it, other than uh, if the provider cannot identify the MSL or what that conversation was about, then you've lost, regardless of the number of interactions. So if you
That's
can say,
excellent.
"Gosh, do you know the first name of your MSL for this company?" and they can answer that question, then they should continue to be employed. You know what I mean? Because I think that type of knowledge, that type of interaction, is a meaningful one. Because I can tell you the number of companies that I know, the first names of my MSL right now is like three, maybe, if I'm lucky. So it's like. A lot of, if they're going to be assessed by box checking, then they're going to lose the long-term battle here, I think.
And it would seem to me, because your practices are in a lot of in various different therapeutic areas. So you're probably seeing MSLs and all kinds of, I mean, so if you
All
only
the
remember
time, yeah.
3 by first name, that means you're probably not getting served.
Right, exactly. It's certainly not in a meaningful way, right? I'm an immunologist, a clinical immunologist. All the monoclonals are coming through our practice now. So even like things like anti-cholesterol medications, Alzheimer's medications, we're infusing these things. So the MSLs have an interest in coming in to talk to us about their molecules and updates in their prescribing information. We have limited time. If you can talk your MSLs into creating, and again, it's an approach that's either they have it or they don't in many cases.
So it's really having that business mindset. I think that's one of the things we talked about in addition to just the scientific acumen, right? I will never forget, you probably don't remember this. I wouldn't expect you to with as many people as you engage. We were at a dinner with your group of providers. And I think it was one of the last times we had engaged, but every time we would have conversations, part of the things that I would do, knowing that at the time the company I was with didn't have much new, and the thing that they had new was much at a disadvantage compared to all the others that were coming out, dupilumab being the competitor, right? And so one of the things, my approach was really to, hey, did you see the new data on this? Or what about the therapeutic area for that? It was really more of a comprehensive thing. I just thought that was part of the job. But when you left, one of the things that you said, you turned to me and you said, Chad, I really appreciate what you bring. I want you to know I'm going to do whatever I can to help support your company. Now, I thought that was really an interesting thing, because we always say, look, I mean, we want to detach ourselves from prescription volume and those types of things. Certainly we have different roles, but the reality is we should believe in our products. We should believe in investment for improvement in patient outcomes. It's not our job to convince you of it, but it is to be that resource. And it's just it's something that I think the more we can accept and appreciate that it's all part of an all-encompassing, it's just a piece of the puzzle that ultimately goes together for that objective from a business standpoint, the better that we can be as well too. So anyway, I think it's fascinating. Thanks for sharing the way that you do, and I think that makes a lot of sense in my mind.
Yeah, for sure. You said, you kind of hit the nail on the head there. I think that this is in a field, in medicine in general, we're rarely going to get any head-to-head data where I'm going to say one molecule is better than the other. So it's about access, it's about relationships, right? So the data are important, but in the end, you have to trust the source of the information, and developing that relationship be above and beyond the data, which gets washed out in the noise, because in the end, we have our anecdotal experience in the clinical trials, and we're going to try things based upon our relationships. I firmly believe that, and our experience with the molecules, and your ability to improve the comfort level with whatever you're bringing to the table makes it more likely to be prescribed.
How do you think we can leverage AI from a medical affairs perspective?
Yeah, I don't, there, all these, the machine learning stuff that's coming is exponentially growing, and our, yeah, we're spiraling into this abyss. I have no idea where it's going to take us. God, but I think there's no doubt there's information to be gathered, and I I can't predict it, honestly. There's so many doomsdayers out there that says the whole world's going to collapse because of AI, and there's others that think that's just going to be a wonderful resource that helps expand our knowledge of the universe. So I as far as what you're going with, I'm sure that they could look at. And again, we're not supposed to be talking about sales necessarily from an MSL capacity, but I do think that you could certainly look at the types of interactions and the people and really assess whether or not it's changing their prescribing. There's got to be a way to extract that data based upon the types of interactions, and what that particular learning algorithm is. I don't know, but that's for the computer science guys to help figure that out with you guys. So
Chad's over embraced to Chat GPT.
yeah,
Just
I don't
gonna
know
be
if you can
honest.
over. I mean, I think either you're on board or you're going to be left behind, because so many they keep talking about universal basic income. It's going to come. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be looking for jobs once this stuff. And I would have never have guessed it would have hit the creative space as early as it has. I thought it'd be all the the box checkers and things like that, but. I think I'll probably be safe in medicine for just a little bit. Like if I was a radiologist, I'd be scared to death. I mean, I would rather have the computer read my radiology images, because it could see 60 trillion images in a second. It can learn backwards and forwards much better than some human who misses a tumor or
Oh wow,
something like
yeah.
that. So, there are certainly fields that are going to be affected earlier than others, but my goodness, as long as I'm providing, hands-on patients and people want human interaction, I think I'll be safe for at least a few more years.
Well, that actually makes me think of a question that I was going to ask earlier. So when we were kind of delving into maybe social media. So we, the industry has started developing these positions for things they're calling uh, digital MSLs for digital thought leaders. Which maybe if you do make some TikToks, you would be a digital thought leader. But it's like what people tweet and things like that. I mean, what is your thoughts? I mean, do you think there truly are digital thought leaders? Are there people that influence you
I think people
in
are
your
trying to
practice?
do that. I got a message today from my group, my NP and PA group that work with me directly, and they sent me an Instagram of an allergist doing a hula hoop, asking about the latest Taylor Swift album, and so just trying to
It came out
garner.
this morning. It's a double
Yeah,
album.
there you go. So trying to garner interest in his channel. I thought it was entertaining. I certainly value it for entertainment purposes more than medical purposes. But like my friend Doug Jones, who's in Utah, he has a pretty wide following for his TikToks and things like that in the space of food allergy, because he's considered a key opinion leader in that space as a food or immunotherapy provider. So they exist. I don't know if those guys have guys and gals have the time or the energy to be interacting from that perspective. But I think to keep up with the times, you do it until it proves it's not useful, and then like it's kind of like we talked about when you start, throwing out new ideas, or you start, as Chad was talking about, when I get interested in something, I'll go down a path until it either is no longer interesting or it proved fruitless, or at least I learned what I learned and I didn't want to do anymore. Those are the kind of things you'll need to try to see if you can get meaningful interaction, and if you do, you may have just figured out a whole new way to improve access for your MSLs to interact with not only the key opinion leaders, but maybe they have their own presence that they start getting a following for other, the general wider population. I mean, look at your podcast here, right? You're doing things that haven't existed before. You're talking to other people who are interested in the space of MSLs, and that will probably lead to some other idea for someone else. And it's amazing how these things just kind of fly off of one another, and eventually you end up with a whole new thing that you would have never guessed would even exist because you put the thought out there in the universe, and someone else ran with it. So
So when you watch we'll just say that person's a digital thought leader doing their influencing thing with a hula hoop, does that how does that impact your view of the person's credibility, or does it?
it
Or do you
doesn't.
think,
It
hey, that's
doesn't at
cool?
all. And
Okay.
I love creatives in general, so I thought it was funny. Did I
I do.
follow him? No, I didn't follow him, but I said that's pretty cool. So yeah, but yeah, I listen to some of the other ones that are technical, and I follow some of them, but we're friends, so I'm always interested to see what they're doing. My friend Tom Chaco in Atlanta does all sorts of little quick things. He has a whole social media company that follows him around, and he creates TikToks all day long. And I laugh at him and I watch him, and some of them are interesting and things like that. But I do think that most of that, from our perspective, is really to acquire new patients or to educate our patients. Um, I'm not sure it's yeah, it's an interesting concept. I don't know. I don't know if your digital
Yeah.
MSL have an effect there. They're really trying to educate their patient population and to put stuff out there to get followers, so they can. It's basically marketing for all intents and purposes, right?
So
So
not to influence the um, treatment habits of other physicians, but to build their own
more so,
patient
for
preference.
sure, for sure. Yeah,
Okay.
and there are people like watch
Okay.
Peter T on the Drive, right? I mean, he's the guru of longevity and the health span and things like that. He's talking to the general population, but he's also changing the way prescribers think about the medications that they prescribe, and prescribing exercise and diet and things like that. So, but yeah, I think there's something there. I mean, it's run with it and see what happens. I think. If you were to say, if the MSL were to hit those people and say, "Gosh, you haven't talked about X, right? Severe eosinophilic asthma or eosinophilic gastrointestinal disease. Why don't you, tell us what you know about that? Are you seeing patients with that condition?" And then all of a sudden, you've maybe got a couple TikTok posts that may increase awareness on the disease state, which is related to the molecule, which then drives, people to come in and get treated, or at least ask questions about the disease process. And from an MSL perspective, throwing out disease processes for us to discuss with the patients is not a bad idea.
I have seen it a few times. You're right. I think I would agree with you. The majority are doing that for patient recruitment when you're thinking about from the social media. I do think it's been interesting across some of the therapeutic areas, Dr. Wynn, where you have these there's a resistance to break the changing of the guard, if you will, like the top PIs across the U.S. and a certain therapeutic area are always the ones that are asked to be the leads on a publication, or always asked to be the speaker, or always asked to do the clinical trial, whatever that might be about to be the point on that. Oftentimes, because it's so difficult to break into that, I've seen some that actually decide to leverage the digital platforms to really get out their message and try to build kind of their regional status and even national status by sharing their thoughts on different things and providing that type of scientific education just in brief snippets that way to try to help position themselves maybe for the long term, or it's just an easier path with less headaches and those types of
Sure.
things as publications, etc. So
And this all comes back to marketing, whether you're marketing self or a drug, right? So in those instances, those people are trying to market themselves to become regionally or nationally known. That puts them in positions to offer opportunities that wouldn't have existed otherwise. And I think that would be of interest to the pharmaceutical companies because those people have tons of followers, and followers are potentially shareholders or they're potential patients. And again, this is not simple. We're it's not simple. We're the science and this is the business. It's all intertwined. It's like in the asthma space, the marketers rule the roost. It's crazy how much we're marketed to that. Oh, the mechanism of action is eosinophils or it's atopy. And it's noise. It's manufactured. They're so intertwined, and 75% of my patients are going to qualify for multiple biologics because there's an overlap in the disease states. It completely applies to this exact same concept. They're all self-fulfilling, and they're feeding off of each other, and there's no clear-cut lines. And in the end, I think your company obviously knows this because they're investing in it. And they invest in it because they think in the end, the more comfortable you are with the science, the more likely you are to prescribe their drug.
I love it. All right, one last question for you.
No,
I know. Do
no,
what?
no. I
What?
know I told you I wasn't going to do this, but he brought it up. So, I usually ask our guests a random question at the
Okay,
end.
sure.
And I'm sorry, you talked about music way too much. And
Oh,
I am an absolute music fan.
great.
Um, in fact, my daughter is on an airplane right now to Atlanta to record her first album.
Oh, wow.
But,
Congratulations.
well, well, thank you
Yeah.
that she's not going to be around for the weekend. But, okay. So what was your very first concert?
I went to see, Rush, I think, was my first concert. So progressive rock. I think it was probably in fifth grade, and that
Wow.
would have been, 84, 85. No, is that right? Can it be that late, that long ago? I would think it was probably Roll the Bones was the tour. I'm trying to go back here. I don't remember. It wasn't something like some legendary tour or anything, but it was pretty phenomenal. I've probably been to, I don't know, I would guess thousands of concerts now. I try to go to a concert a week, a show a week. Music is my passion, absolutely. So I studied guitar since I was a little kid. So I've studied rock and jazz and blues and classical. And like I truly believe, like I've my musical tastes have gotten so weird. I used to just be, like rock early. I grew up in the '80s, hair metal. And I started studying guitar at that time. So we were really technical players. And then the '90s was just so different with just like it was much more
Grunge.
emotive and yeah, the grunge and all. There's tons of great rock in that era. But now I've gotten much heavier and much mellower. So like you're talking here, Brandy Carlisle and Justin Vernon through,
Oh, yeah.
maybe fusion with Snarky Puppy and maybe Jacob Collier, and then all the way through to black metal like Deaf Heaven and things like that. So I listen to so many
I
different
know
types of
every single
music,
one of those.
and so like to me, a good song is a good song regardless of how you decide to emote yourself. So now that I'm working a lot or going to Nashville, and I have my friends that are pretty heavily invested in the alt country and the country scene. They've done the Jason Isbell records and the Chris Stapleton records, and they just did this Miranda Lambert's record and Carrie Underwood's record and Darius Rucker's album. I'm listening to more of those records because my friends are involved in them. My friend Pete just mastered that Zach Bryan record that was like #1 for ages and ages and ages. So I don't know. I just love creativity and I love music, and I try to go to at least a couple festivals a year just to go see what contemporary music is as it continues to evolve. There's only 12 notes still, as far as I know, and it's amazing how many different patterns and melodies you can create with just 12 notes. But I'm so interested in music and in the theory behind it and the history behind it, and I know way too much about arcane genres of rock and metal that probably I shouldn't, but it's what I love, and I think you gravitate towards learning the nuance of those things when you're knee deep in it for so many years.
I'm sorry. This is my last question, and I'll let you. What's your favorite guitar that you play
Oh
today?
man, I have so
Anyway,
many
I'm sure it
guitars.
changes.
I'm in my studio actually. I'm in my recording studio right now.
I was
Um,
wondering about what was on the roof, actually.
yeah, those are diffusers. So I have a bunch of early 335 Gibsons, which it's a classic. You've probably seen the 335, and I have some early pre CBS Fenders, which are really nice guitars. Les Paul is a classic, right? Classic rock guitar. Though probably I would say even maybe my favorite guitar was my very first guitar. I have an early like an '80s Kramer guitar that was, you know, because I used that thing forever and ever and ever before I was ever even a physician. I look at that one fondly.
Oh,
I don't know. I have so many. Uh, you know, uh, it's hard to pick one, but I think they all have their story, and somehow they've made their way in the universe to my little studio, and so I try to be stewards of them for now until they get passed on to the next generation. So, but they all have their story, and they all sound different. They all feel different, and that's kind of the beauty of the organic nature of music.
I love this guy. Where
Ah,
has he been, Chad?
Well,
Man,
I'm telling
we
you,
talked. We
I told you you would like him.
Yeah.
there you go.
I love it. Dr. Wynn, I hope it's not another 7 years before we get to
Yeah.
connect again.
Well,
Man, it's
if we're lucky, we have another 7 years to do all sorts of things, and we'll have new things to talk about. But I'm always here. You know how to get a hold of me if you want to chat about the multiverse or whatever, some new stock or something else in private equity or something musical. You can reach me and we can chat.
I appreciate it. Hey, have a great weekend. Thanks so much for making
Yeah,
time.
loved it.
Really,
I had a
so good.
blast. Had a
So
blast.
good.
It was great to
Okay.
meet you. He is a machine. He is super fascinating.
Did we meet the bar that we set at the beginning of the conversation with Dr. Wynn? What are your thoughts?
Well, I would say met and exceeded. I mean, for the number of times where my eyes were like saucers and my mouth came open, this guy is amazing. And I really feel like he gets it too. He knows what is value to him. And I feel like he has a really strong understanding as if he had once been an MSL too.
I love hearing that from, we're not just the touchy feely type of people that because we're so in touch with emotions that we think that that's a certain aspect of the job that needs to be prioritized. I thought that was one of the key things that he shared though, right? About personal connection really helps drive trust, and that trust in turn helps really becoming that scientific partner with a company, with a person, even networking, et cetera. So I was really, I thought that was one of the biggest takeaways for me is how do we build trust from the very beginning? And so hopefully that will be something that resonates with our listeners and with something we can put in practice even the very next day that we're out with our MSLs or we're interviewing for MSLs or you're having conversations with potential MSLs. Again, I'm so glad we were able to have Dr. Wynn on. Look forward to potentially having him back. I know maybe he'll do a jam session with you. You didn't even share with that you play guitar and you have several guitars as well too. So maybe we can make something happen. Maybe he can get you out to Nashville to potentially record with your daughter. I mean, that could be a possibility.
Probably won't happen. I've actually already asked her if I could be Naomi Judd to her Winona Judd, and she said no, and still won't let me play the tambourine because she knows I can't. So, well, I get to do nothing but pay. Well,
at least you get to be a contributor in some way, Mary, and so you know your role, and that's good. So, and more importantly, your daughter knows your role as well too. So, anyway. All right, I guess it's time to wrap things up. But to the listeners out there, thank you so much for making time to be with us today. Thank you for developing us, sharpening us with the feedback that you give us. We never want to stop learning because we know leaders develop leaders. Be sure to follow us on our LinkedIn page. And then if you've not connected with either Mary or I on LinkedIn, feel free to send a connection invite, and we would love to be a part of your network. With that, have a good one. Take care.